Today we will be starting the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It's called the Karma Yoga. However, before we start this chapter, I would like to summarize the second chapter, the Sankhya Yoga. So, in second chapter, having seen those who were ready to fight with him, Arjun felt dejected. He was overwhelmed with pity and was full of sorrow. He was not afraid to fight though, but he was questioning the purpose of the war. It's not that he was afraid to fight. Since all of those who were in opposition will certainly be killed. That's why he knew that. So he was not afraid to fight, but he wondered why we are fighting. Why should we fight? In this state of delusion, he takes refuge and turns to Sri Krishna for answers. So he has questions. He wants to get answers. He was concerned primarily in knowing what should he do which will be good for him. In other words, what will be the right thing to do. So Bhagavan smiled and started to address the concerns of Arjun. See, when somebody talks to you smiling, that means they know the answer already. And they say, what question he is asking? What kind of question is he asking? So, he's smiling. Because what he said really bears the fact that he knew what he was going to say. And why is he saying here questioning? Why is questioning this? The very first thing Bhagavan tells Arjun is that wise ones do grieve over neither those who are dead nor those who are living. Wise people don't grieve. In other words, grief has no place for wise people. He then starts to tell Arjun that the Atma, what is Atma? He starts to tell about the Atma. Atma, he says, is never born nor it dies. So wise people know Atma is never born, it doesn't die. So whatever dies or is born really is not of any material value, nothing. Those who identify the Atma with body, for them Bhagavan says that it attains another body after death. Those who think, well, Atma and body are same, he says, why worry about it? When body dies, the Atma, there will be a new body come on. That will die, a new body will come on. It's always going on and on. One needs to know the body and Atma as two different entities. They are two different things. Senses derive pleasure and pain when they come in contact with their objects. So in body, we have senses, and all the pleasure and pain which we feel is through the senses only. These are transitory in nature. All the pleasure and pain, they are transitory in nature. They come and go. Today somebody is happy and next day he will be sad. So somebody is really feeling good, other day he has a lot of problems. And the problems go away, just like clouds. A cloudy day, the clouds are there, pretty soon sunshine will follow. Those to whom pleasure and pain are alike are the people who are eligible for immortality. All bodies pertaining to imperishable eternal Atma are spoken as perishable. The bodies which are for the eternal imperishable Atma, they are all perishable. All bodies are perishable. Eternal Atma is eternal only. Those who consider Atma to be capable of killing and take it as killed are ignorant. Because Atma cannot be killed, neither Atma kills anything. What Atma does is similar to a person placing his old worn clothes replacing them with the new ones. So somebody You get old shirt, you like it so much, but it's store up, you have to get rid of it, get new one. That's what Atma does. Just takes the body on there, and body is of no use to that Atma, then he just rejects the body and goes out and goes somewhere else. Atma just changes the body. The weapons cannot cut it, fire cannot burn it, water cannot wet it, or the wind cannot dry it, because Atma is incapable of being cut. It is fireproof, impervious to water, and also windproof. For Atma is unmanifested, incomprehensible, and it is spoken as immutable. Knowing Atma as such, you should not grieve. That's why he's telling Arjuna, don't grieve, because Arjuna was full of grief. Even if you consider it to be subject of cycle of birth and death, he's telling about those people who think Atma dies and Atma comes back again, you should not mourn, since for the born death is inevitable, and for the dead rebirth is certain. It's going to happen. Atma remains unmanifest except in the interim between birth and death. Between birth and death, Atma shows up in the body. But after that, beyond that, is unmanifested. You cannot see. Some look at Atma as marvelous. Some speak of it as wonderful. Others hear of Atma as wonder, and others, though hearing it, do not understand what Atma is. Atma is the dweller in all bodies, no matter whether it's ant or human body or whatever body it is. Atma is dweller of the body. And it is indestructible. Therefore, O Arjun, you should not mourn for anyone. Having explained Atma, Bhagavan briefly reminds Arjuna of a Kshatriya dharma, which requires him to fight this righteous war, because this was not a personal war, it was dharma yudh. So he reminds him, you are a Kshatriya and it's your duty to fight this war. Since you are worried about incurring sin for killing in the war, engage in the battle having made pain, pleasure, gain, loss, conquest and defeat same. So you shall incur no sin. Till now Bhagavan talk of the buddhi or the wisdom of Gyan. This was all Gyan in a summary, that's what I am covering it. And now Bhagavan tells Arjuna of the buddhi of yoga. So there are two buddhis he is telling. Second one is buddhi of yoga, endued with which one can cast off the trammels of karma or break through the bonds of karma. If one yogi endued with this buddhi, this wisdom of yoga, one can break through the bond of karma, because karma is supposed to be bondage, causing bondage. But with this yoga, you get rid of the bondage. You see, there is a term called bonding, meaning getting closer, right? You get closer to only those who are already close. You get closer. This bonding means that you are now attached to whatever you are bonded with. You see, you're bonded now. This condition causes the feeling of pain and pleasure. You will feel the pain and pleasure of the person with whom you are close to or you are bonded with. Like being close to a fire, one will experience the heat. Whatever happens to the entity you are bonded with, it will not affect you. So now what is the buddhi of yoga? This is the path of disinterested action. You do the action, but you are really not interested in it for your own sake. In this path there is no loss of effort for the fear of contrary result. No, nothing will happen opposite. It won't hurt you. Furthermore, even a little practice of this discipline saves one from fear of birth and death. In this yoga, the yoga of disinterested action, there is but a single pointed determination. It is determinate and directed singly towards one ideal goal. It doesn't go everywhere, just one particular goal. Bhagavan called this Vyavasayic Buddhi. The term Vyavasaya means profession, right? So the Buddhi has its own professional. It's professional Buddhi. It just goes to its aim. Whatever it's supposed to do, that's all it's going to zero in on doing. Just like any professional person, they know what to do, they come to solve a problem, boom, they did the problem solving and go. That's what this kind of Buddhi does. It doesn't flounder around this way or that way, should we do this, should we? It knows what to do. Its Vyavasaya or profession is to attain moksha. That is the Vyavasaya or Vyavasayic Buddhi. This is the highest ideal. This is the path to Ishwar. Only Ishwar can show this path, and only Ishwar helps one to follow it. One cannot do on their own. Those who think that they can do it on their own, it is their ego which is in control and is leading them. In ego there is death. Those on the path of Ishwar, their ego becomes quiet since they are following the yoga of disinterested action. This is Ishwar Bhakti. So now, those who are undecided about the highest, about the naturally devoted, they naturally devote themselves to lower ideals. Those people who are not, they don't understand or they are undecided about this ultimate, the Ishwar Bhakti, what they do? They devote themselves to lower ideals. Everything besides Ishwar Bhakti is lower. None of these can satisfy, and all these other bhaktis, they never satisfy a person. There is no contentment, because there is no peace, no shanti. Therefore, they pass from one plan to another plan. So today they'll do something, tomorrow they'll jump into something else, because if they did not get satisfied with what they are doing, and they heard, well, maybe this is a better path, go over there, because their buddhi is not professional, vyavasayic, doesn't know what to do. This is Devta Bhakti. Due to the absence of Ishwar Gyan, they call Bhagwan to whosoever they worship. So what do they do? These people, these unwise ones, Bhagwan says, are full of worldly desires. Why they do bhakti? Because they want something from this world. Devoted to Vedas, they all come from Vedas. The reach of Veda is only to heaven. They do not go beyond heaven. So these unwise ones look upon heaven as the supreme goal, and they argue that there is nothing beyond. And that's what you can see all around these days. Even these jihadis, they want to do this so they can go to heaven. Christianity, same way. When they die, they go to heaven. So there is nothing beyond. They don't know anything beyond heaven. They utter flowery speech. All of them talk very nice, sweet talk, and recommend many rituals for attainment of pleasure and power. Such people whose minds are carried away by the word of flowery speech and are deeply attached to pleasure and worldly powers cannot, the word is cannot, and I emphasize the word cannot, attain the determinate intellect. Vyavasayic buddhi, they cannot get Vyavasayic buddhi. In this yuga, the Kali Yuga, there is abundance of such deluded human beings. At the present time, the Islamic Jihad is the perfect example. Little these people know the killing of human lead to hell and the heavens not to heaven, as they are led to believe. So Arjun, Bhagavan says, Arjun, Vedas deal with evolutes of three gunas of the Prakriti. These are Satogun, Rajogun and Tamogun, which are worldly enjoyments. That's all they have, is worldly enjoyment. Prakriti has nothing but worldly enjoyment. And their means, you be free from the triad of gunas. So Bhagavan says to Arjun, go beyond these three gunas. Don't get tangled up in the mire of the three gunas. Rise beyond the pair of opposites like pleasure and pain. Establish yourself in eternal Sattva, which is Ishwar, the Supreme. Absolutely unconcerned about fulfillment and of want and preservation of what has already been obtained. Yog Shem. Become established in Atma. So, to such a person, Vedas are of as much value as a small reservoir to the person who stands at a place where there's water all around. He's got plenty of water. He doesn't care for a small reservoir. Same way, the person who is in Ishwar path, to him, he's got Ishwar everywhere. He doesn't worry about these little things from the worldly pleasures. He doesn't need the worldly pleasures. So for Brahm Jnani, the Vedas are of no value. Vedas are of value to those who seek the pleasure and powers of the world through karma. Bhagavan says, Arjun, your right is to work only. Human beings' right is only to work, but never to the fruit thereof. This is the trait of a Satoguni person. Be not instrumental in making your action to bear fruit. This is Rajoguni person. Neither let your attachment be towards inaction, not doing anything. I'm not going to do anything. That's Tamogun. This is the Sarup of Karma. So Karma has three things: Satoguni Karma, Rajoguni Karma, and Tamoguni Karma. Satoguni Karma says, my right is only to act, to do, to work, not for the fruit of it. If it comes, fine. Doesn't come, doesn't matter. The Rajoguni says he wants to become instrument of getting the fruit of that action. And Tamoguni says, I'm not going to act until I get my fruit. So there are three distinct things. Therefore, Arjun, perform your duties being steadfast in yoga, renouncing attachment, remaining unconcerned to regarding success and failure. Don't worry about success and failure. Do your job and things will fall in place. In other words, do your duty and let the chips fall where they may. Only person who is very confident can think like that. Not everybody can. Everybody is worried about whether it's going to work or not work. A person who is confident, Vyavasayik Buddhi person, he knows it's going to work. So he doesn't worry about the result. He just keeps doing his job. That's it. Same way somebody knows they are professional. They are good in something. They know exactly what to do. They just go in there sleeping and they can go in there, do their job and come back. They don't worry about what's going to happen next. Such evenness of mind, equanimity, is called yoga. And why should you perform such duties in this manner? Because action with desire or selfish motive is far inferior to this yoga in the form of equanimity. O Dhananjaya, seek refuge in this equipoise of mind. For poor and wretched are those who are instrumental in making their actions bear fruit. Those who want to do something so their action will bear some fruit, they are poor because they want something. See, if somebody has everything, they don't want, they find they have everything, they don't need to worry about it. So same way, person in Ishwar Bhakti, he knows the Ishwar take care of him, he's got everything, he don't have to worry about it. All he's got to do is Ishwar Bhakti, and that's it. And he knows exactly what to do. Endued with equanimity, one casts off both the virtues and vices in the life. He doesn't care for virtues, he doesn't care for vices. Therefore, devote yourself in this yoga, this samatva yoga. For this is the skill in performing karma. The wise one, the jnani people, abandoning the fruit borne out by karma, are freed from the shackles of birth. Why do we get rebirth? Why we are born all the time? Because of our karma. Our karma is binding us. They are creating bondage for us. And what is the bondage? You are born and then you die, then born and die. That's the bondage. They go to the supreme state where there is no vikar. And all this karma, bondage is because of the vikar. At this time, your buddhi crosses over the mire of delusions. For the person who is practicing this yoga, there will be a time where his buddhi will cross over the mire of delusion, which is like a quicksand. At that time, you will develop vairagya. Bhagavan says, when that happens, you will develop vairagya. What is vairagya? Vairagya means Vit rag, vigata raga, means the attachment or like or dislike, that's attachment, for anything in this world goes away. That's vairagya, whether he doesn't like or dislike. And what he doesn't like or dislike? Towards the enjoyment of this world and beyond, which have been heard and are yet to be heard of. The influence of equanimity is vairagya. Samat buddhi, the influence of that is vairagya. For the pleasure and powers of the world, this world and beyond. This is because in these there are pair opposites. In the worldly things, there's pair of opposites. If there's a day, there's going to be night. It's given. If there's a pleasure, there's going to pain is going to follow. It's given. So these are all, they go together. Finally, your buddhi, which has been confused, having listened to various statements, what are such statements? Like the yagna, by doing this yagna, you get a son. By doing this puja, you can destroy your enemy. These are things which Vedas go into. And by doing certain things, you achieve certain goals. But they are all worldly goals. So, these statements, you will rest steady and undisturbed in Parameshwar. When you get this buddhi, Bhagavan says, you will forget about all this and you will steadfastly situate yourself in Parameshwar. You will then attain yoga. In other words, you will obtain the union with Ishwar. Thus Bhagavan explained to Arjuna what is good for him and how to go about getting it. So now Arjuna asked the traits that define such a person, the Sthit Prajna. He wanted answers for 4 particular questions about such a person. What is he like while merged in Samadhi? When that person is Samadhi, what is he like? How would I know that this person is Sthit Prajna? How does he speak when he leaves the Samadhi and comes into this sansara? How does he sit? And how does he move around? So Bhagavan says that in that time, when one casts away all desires from his mind and is satisfied in Atma by his Atma, then he is said to be of steady wisdom. This Sthit Prajna. So what is here? It says, first of all, he cast away all his desires. He has no desires for this world, because all desires are only for worldly possessions. So his mind is clear of all these desires. Then he is then satisfied with his own, within himself. He doesn't look outside for any satisfaction. He is totally satisfied in his Atma, by his Atma, within himself. It's hard to understand, but this is what that is. One reason we are not satisfied with ourselves is because we have desires for outwardly things. We are always looking outside. We have no time to even sit down and look inward what we are. So this person has given up, cast away all the desires for the outside thing. Now his mind is free to think about what is he like, what is inside of him. He whose mind is not perturbed amid sorrow and whose thirst for pleasure has altogether disappeared. This person is like what? His mind is not perturbed by sorrow. Somebody gives him pain, he doesn't care, it doesn't bother him. Or somebody sings his praises, it doesn't matter. It's all gone. There are no receptors in him anymore which register somebody giving him pain or pleasure. It's all gone. And has become free from affection. He doesn't have affection. And fear and anger, they all go together. With affection, fear of getting away from that person. If there is some affection somebody, well, maybe tomorrow the person may not have the affection for me. So that's the fear. And when the person leaves, then there is anger. Why did the person leave? So they all go together. He is indeed a Muni of steady wisdom. He remains unattached from everything at all time. There is no time that he is attached to anything. He is not pleased upon receiving good, nor is vexed meeting evil. He is of steady wisdom. When he sees danger coming his way, he pulls his senses inwardly, because it's the senses which are working outside. He pulls them inwardly like a tortoise pulls all his limbs inside when he sees danger coming. He who has seen Supreme not only abstain from the sense objects, his longing for those also disappears. So there's two things. Getting the pleasure of the sense objects, and he says, well, I'm not going to be around these things. He forcibly takes himself away from it. But inside his mind there's always that rust, that longing remains in there. But this person, this Sthit Prajna person who has seen Parameshwar, his longing for everything is gone too. Turbulent by nature, Bhagavan says, the senses can forcibly carry away the mind of even a wise man. Senses are so strong, they can carry away the mind of a wise man who is striving for perfection, who is doing the sadhana. Therefore, one with a steady mind, having controlled his senses, sits focused only on me and me alone, as the Supreme Person. O Mahabaho, he is of steady wisdom, whose senses are completely restrained from their objects, because senses can carry away his mind. That person who lives abandoning all desires, devoid of longing, without the sense of I and or mine, attains peace. As long as there is I or mine, there is no peace. Only thing there is death. O Arjun, this is the state of one who has attained the Parameshwar Brahma. He never succumbs to delusion and he goes into Ishwar Brahma. The condition of Arjun was such, it was like that of a person who has an illness. He went to Bhagavan Sri Krishna to get a medicine for his illness so he can be cured. Bhagavan told him the medicine, gave him, this is what you need, prescribed him the medicine, and at the same time said, this is also a poison. However, you go ahead and take it. Don't worry about it, just take it. It's a poison, it can kill you, but take it. So after hearing from Bhagavan about karma and the Samatva Buddhi Yoga, and learning that the Samatva Buddhi Yoga is superior to karma, Arjun is being told to get on with the performance of the karma. So one side Bhagavan says Samatva Buddhi Yoga is better than karma, but you do the karma. This medicine you take, it's poison, but you take it. This caused confusion for Arjun. Furthermore, if becoming Sthit Pragya by practicing the Samatva Buddhi Yoga will result in obtaining the joy of being Brahm while still in the sansar, and no such thing has been said for the practice of karma, then why Bhagavan is telling him to perform karma? That is his confusion. This increased the level of confusion and doubt in the mind of Arjun, who simply had asked for a way which is good for him. He just wanted one thing to be told, do this and you will be okay. With this confused state of mind, Arjun says,
Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tat kim karmani ghore mam niyojayasi keshava.
O Janardan. The word Janardan is called Janta Janardan. The one who take care of Janta means group of people. O Janardan, if to you Gyan is superior to Karma, like you said earlier, then why, Keshav, you are appointing me in this horrible karma of killing people? Here Arjun is saying that one karma leads to another karma. And leaving the sansar, becoming a sannyasi with Samatva Buddhi Yoga is better. And he says, I have been ready to do this all along. In the very first chapter he said he wants to be sannyasi, he don't want to be fighting the war. Then why are you putting me to perform such an awful karma? That's his question. So Bhagavan tells Arjun that Gyan says that Atma cannot be killed and karma can cause bondage. I agree with him, Arjun. But you avoid the bondage of karma. Here Bhagavan told the karma yoga. This is what karma yoga is. Avoid the bondage of karma. Then Bhagavan said that performing karma in this way, those who get higher jnana, they achieve the higher state and become sthit pragya. These people obtain the state of Brahm while they are in the sansar. They then constantly enjoy bliss being in the sansar. They are still here, but they are always happy, they are in bliss. Arjun says, then why do you want me to get into this terrible karma? Simple question. we need to see that all dharma, no matter which dharma you take, they consider sannyas to be superior. It's not only Hindu dharma. It's in Buddhist, Jain dharma, Christian. All religions have sannyas. It's supposed to be superior. However, Bhagavad Gita, in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna says that it is true that karma results in bondage, but you do not let the karma to become the agent of bondage. That's the crux of Gita. You do the karma, knowing the karma can be bondage, cause bondage, but you act in such a way that you keep the bondage part out of it. You stop it from reaching to that stage where it becomes a bondage. But do not leave karma. Perform karma. Therefore, the message of Gita is that do not leave sansar and rather perform karma, being in sansar, but according to the gyan. First get the gyan. In sansar, an ordinary person as a householder continues to conform himself like others in the society, thinking that the others may not criticize him. Most people do that. Common person, what other people will say if I do this? So they end up doing things which they are not supposed to be doing. He has been continuing to emulate others. If somebody has something, they want the same thing. They want to be not any less than anybody else. These activities do not lead to dharma. They in fact keep the person, take him away more further and farther from dharma. It rather leads to bhog. In this scenario, one earns, or like we say here, make money, collect worldly things, show these things to others, see what I got. The others will try to outdo him. This keeps on escalating, and one day the life comes to an end. Just doing this. Today, generally, people spend their lives to maintain an outwardly show. That's all it is. What should be is to use your life to uplift your Atma. What is inside? Uplift that. Instead, we continue running after prapanch. And the amazing thing is that we do know that the prapanch will end one day. Everybody says, yeah, sansar will end, this will happen. But I'm running after it. Because everybody else is doing, why shouldn't I do it? Here Arjuna is asking Bhagavan as to why you want me to do this karma. Gita teaches to do karma, earn money, but do not live for money. Use the money wisely and for the activities of dharma, the activities which will help us elevate our Atma to a higher level. That's what you use it for. Use the money wisely and for activities of dharma. Do not become a sannyasi. Gyan can be obtained only through karma. You cannot obtain gyan just like magic. You have to do karma and earn the right for that gyan to be given to you. So that is also, karma becomes a precursor for gyan. The fact is that we get human body and gyan only through karma and no other way. So here in Gita, the doctrine is that of karma and not that of gyan. Primarily Gita is about karma. Because by doing karma, certain karma, you do get gyan. But Arjuna is questioning himself getting into the war. He further says,
व्यामिश्रेणेव वाक्येन बुद्धिं मोहयसीव मे तदेकं वद निश्चित्य येन श्रेयोऽहमाप्नुयाम्
Vyamishrenev vakyena. With these seemingly conflicting words, buddhi moh yasiv me. You are as it were bewildering my understanding. You are just making me bewildered by saying these two opposite things. Yes, bandhan kara, but do this. It's a poison, but take this medicine. So I'm confused. By going back and forth between karma and jnana, it is as if you are deluding my buddhi. You are causing delusion for me. Therefore, tadekam vad nishchitya. Tell me decisively that one path. Yen shreyo amapriyam. Following which, that particular path following which, I, meaning my Atma, can achieve kalyan, the state of bliss, to attain the highest. Don't give me these 2 or 3 different things. Don't go back and forth. I just want to know one thing. You are confusing me by going back and forth. Arjun wanted to get Shreya, or the uplifting of Atma. The prey or the worldly accomplishment were his. They are already his. He could go fight a war and he get all the prey. He didn't need to do anything else. But he wanted Shreya. So he asked Bhagwan to simply tell. He says, simply tell me that one thing that I should do to achieve Shreya. So now Bhagwan replies to Arjun in the next slok, and we will start that next time. Jai Sri Krishna.